I'll call the full board of the Board of Investments to order. I do want to note on the screen today is Jeremy Trebus. He's our senator from Great Falls, and I want to say to you, Jeremy, welcome. We encourage you to be an active participant. So if you have any questions, be sure and ask. We're a little more, the chair, I reserve the right if there's a contentious issue to go through the chair. But basically, we're not near as formal as in the legislature or anything. If you have a question, you can just ask anybody. And in addition to that, I'd encourage you, maybe not in a regular meeting, but I think you can work with Dan a little bit and he'll give you some education, because we encourage your active participation and look forward to you serving on the board.
Appreciate it.
Okay. So with that, I'll put the notice out here that I assume the video recording is working, and so we're on video. Keep that in mind. And Savannah is so efficient, she kept us going and got the roll call done. And so the next thing that I'll call for, is there any public comment on issues within the board's jurisdiction? Hearing none or seeing no hands raised, we can move on. All of us were here for the loan committee, but as part of our process to have the record correct, Jeff, you need to make a quick loan committee report.
You bet. So in the loan committee, we had two loan requests that were reviewed. The first being an in-state loan request for Bowman Lake LLC, which was approved unanimously. The second being a intercap loan request for the city of Lewistown, Montana, also approved unanimously.
Any questions for Jeff? Hearing none, thank you, Jeff. So we'll move to the exciting part of the agenda, the policy review and adoption. I somehow feel that Maggie should be on this here for us, but since she didn't volunteer. So it's in your book under tab 2. And Dan, do you have any opening statements, or should we turn it over to John?
I guess maybe just quickly for everyone's information, this is a typical meeting we have following the legislative session to update our investment policy statements and guidelines to reflect the actions of the legislature. Many of the bills will have an effective date of July 1, thus the reason for the special board meeting, so we can have the policies in place to reflect the law before the law becomes effective. So these are the ones that we've been able to garner, will be coming into play and will change. We'll be watching closely for any codification, changes that come out as the bills are actually enrolled and engrossed. There's still a lot of law that hasn't been signed or transmitted. So as those come up, we'll just incorporate them into an August meeting. But this reflects our best understanding of the law changes as they are today. And I turn it over to Mr. Ramasco to walk us through the first batch.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Mark. With these law changes, were you counseled or did you give input as to any difficulty in the wording or anything to make sure that we could work with it? Or
Boy, there's something I can tap dance around for a minute. So an example, the end of Watch Trust. Yes, the Department of Justice reached out, asked us to take a look at it. And the way that they had written the bill was not at all doable. So I provided them feedback, said, what about this? It does the same thing, because we're not in the position to say on another agency or another entity's laws, like here's what the policy should look like. Here's how it should functionally work.
Right.
So we provided functional feedback when we were asked. that would be the first tranche that we can talk about the housing bill and
Yeah, we don't have to
yeah,
talk about
yeah,
that.
but for the first batch, at least within, end of watch, yes, coal severance, I think we had some conversations with the conservation district policy was sort of a legislative priority. So when we were asked, we provided functional feedback, I wouldn't say policy feedback.
That's something that you could work with.
Yes,
Okay. All right, thank you. Housing is the whole other story.
that's a whole.
Okay.
So, John, you're up.
All right.
So,
Members of the board, Mr. Chairman.
John, my question is, what did you do wrong that you had to do this today?
I'm in the office closest to Dan Vila, so that's what happens. He comes down to the first person he gets to. But actually, Jack, as you know, the fixed income team generally deals with the separately managed accounts, which are all accounts that are not part of the pension. So that's how we ended up with this on our plate. So I think that Dan talked about the House Bill 819, which was referred to the Homes Act. Several sections of that resulted in what will be new funds for the Board of Investments. The first one being the Montana Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund.
John, if I could stop you, why don't we do the coal, that first batch on the agenda, the coal severance tax perm, coal endowment, and we'll deal with housing separately.
Great. That works better for me. Okay, so first coal tax is the change to the coal tax severance permanent fund, where the legislature also through House Bill 819 increased the amount that goes to the multifamily homes program by 50 million to a total of 65 million. Any questions on that one? It's fairly straightforward.
Where are we?
What's the number of,
That is policy 40.807.
okay, tell us which policy you're referring to, the number of policy when you're going through these, so 40.807.
Yep,
I don't see 65. in there.
No,
Turn to
it's
page
40.801.
well, it's on 807 too,
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's
so-
where you at the very bottom,
It's
65 million.
65 million, right. So on page 2 of policy 807, a maximum of 15 struck 65 million coal trust multifamily homes per section 176308.
So before we move on, I just want to go on record of, I really analyzed these for grammar and whatnot. And there are some issues. We reference investment guidelines, but no place do we really have the identified investment guidelines. Dan and I were talking earlier about potentially adding to this before the bottom part, I guess, the objectives and say investment guidelines. So I just, when we approve these, I want to make sure we understand there are typos. There are things that should be capitalized. There are grammatical errors where we use are instead of is. And I would like to work with Dan on making sure we
And as
get
the
those
board,
things fixed.
just to remind the board, when we did the line by line policy review, we did not do chapter 40. So this is the first time we've sort of done that grammatical scrub on anything within chapter 40. So as we do these, we'll incorporate the grammatical and sort of what I'll call style changes that the board directed staff to take on the remainder of the chapters of the policy, and we'll incorporate them into here, assuming you're okay with that sort of grammatical changes. Obviously, nothing substantive.
No substantive.
So just to double check with the full board, when we approve these today, we're approving these with the understanding that those changes Maggie just talked about will be incorporated in the final policy. We won't have to come back and reapprove that. But the final changes that Maggie is gonna do and will be in her policy will be in the formal policy manuals that you all get. And that is the document that we'll really look at and refer to if we need to. So I'd like to go ahead and proceed with that unless there's some objection from any board member. So hearing no objection, Maggie, you think that's enough clarity? We can proceed, and we've done that in the past and it's actually worked very well. Okay, John.
PBR, you're up.
All right. If we could go on to policy 40-808, the Montana Coal Endowment Conservation District Fund. This will be a new fund. It's a new carve out from the coal severance tax fund. The 1/2 of severance taxes that are collected are put into the permanent fund. But then the legislature can allocate or those funds as they see fit. A new allocation is for the endowment fund. I'm sorry, for the conservation fund. 75% of the money will go into that fund. 65%, sorry, will go into that new severance fund, the new conservation fund. 10% will go to the school facilities fund, and 25% will continue to go to the Big Sky Endowment Fund. Additionally in that bill, there was the coal board fund established. That will not start to fund until the conservation district monies reach $100 million. So we're not bringing a policy statement for that part of it because that's several years out in our mind.
So this would, the percentages that John referenced would be on 40.801. And you can see the additional $100 million and then the breakouts of the different percentages. And then the authorizing policy, the sort of governing policy, investment guideline objectives and guidelines is 40.808 for those two particular, this particular portion of the, what is it, the conservation district fund.
Okay, so when you say $100 million is for the conservation district fund, that's going to reach to 100 million.
To reach to 100 million, correct.
So John, just a rough guess, how much will go in there each year to build to that 100? Do you have any idea?
Well, I would preface that with the observation that it depends on coal severance tax revenues. But if we were to think of it in terms of what we've seen recently, total coal severance tax revenues running about 60 million a year. Half of that then going into the permanent fund, or 30 million. So then if I'm doing my rough arithmetic right, 65% of that 30 would be in the neighborhood of 20 million a year going into that, Jack. So then extending that out 5 years before that reaches its maximum funding.
Good. So Dan, I've got a question. When we approve these, do you want to approve them in a group or individually, or what would you think the best procedure would be?
So I guess my thought would be to do all of those in the first section, investment policy statements on the agenda as a group.
Okay.
And then all of the housing policies as a group.
Okay. So again, that's subject to the board's approval. And that's the way we'll proceed, so we won't have a bunch of different votes. But again, we can pull anything out and vote on it separately if you want, so we'll keep that in mind as we go ahead. Mark?
So on this specific one, on the Conservation District Fund, so we're gonna build the balance to, it's a trust?
Yes,
Okay,
so it's a trust within the trust, so it's like TSEP.
okay. So we're gonna build that trust to $100 million.
Yep.
The intent is to use the earnings off of that to distribute, and then the trust stays balanced, principal stays at $100 million.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
John?
Then going on to policy 40-900, which is the overriding document of the separate managed accounts. We're just when we codified, or when we put this policy into the governance policy from a separate document, it rendered some verbiage obsolete. And so we're just asking for the ability to go back and fix that verbiage along as part of the process that Maggie called out as well.
Right here.
it's at the, it's a
Back
few
further.
page back. The biggest part of, aside from the grammatical, I'll call it, is we're updating deceptive listed accounts. So if you look at policy, page 6 of 7, policy 40.948 includes end of what we add end of watch. Next page, Montana State Library, and then we do have to update the 2 housing ones to reflect the, I think the numbers are correct. Yeah, and then the 2 Board of Investments housing policies. So we incorporate the other policies into the separately managed account list. Okay,
Okay. Going on then to policy 40-948, the new end of watch trust. The legislature established a trust for emergency responders. So they're going to fund that with $12 million. The earnings off that will go to pay for catastrophically injured or deceased law enforcement. And so there's a lot of interesting verbiage in regards to how earnings are appropriated, potentially deferred and reappropriated. And that's included just so your staff can understand that it's possible that earnings could accrue to the principal of the trust. But in general, how this will work is we would essentially invest the $12 million in the trust fund investment pool, and all earnings would then go into the short-term investment pool to be drawn down by the Department of Justice to pay for those expenses.
yeah, John, it's 10, isn't it?
10 is 10, right? I'm sorry. The housing trust was 12. This is 10 million.
So they can dive into the principle of that amount. And then it has to be brought back up.
And then they have to bring it back. If they spend principal, they have to go to the legislature to get more money. So it's not optimal, but given the amount we're talking about, and the infrequency of eligibility, I don't know that they'll be stuck in a position of having to sell at a loss in order to fund those benefits.
When it says eligible law enforcement, is that only state government in law enforcement, or what does that? include?
It includes local, county, the statute defines the eligibility. And one of the things that you'll see with a lot of these trust funds is we're happy to invest the money and we don't want anything to do with the program administration. So and that's why we made the change several years ago, where the board, we no longer distribute to outside accounts. We only distribute to the STIP accounts, so that there's a buy and sell action on the part of the agency to pay those benefits or to do whatever activity the legislature has authorized them to. So we don't have any hands in it. So we'll keep it in trust. We'll keep it, we'll trust in STIP. We'll distribute the income, and then Department of Justice will decide how to administer those benefits.
Okay.
And importantly, they will be the ones audited on it, not us.
Is there any agreement with them that they would know if something's coming down the road, so we could be ready to distribute funds? Again, I don't want to sell something when we're
So
not optimal.
I think we can have conversations. John meets with all of his clients fairly regularly. You know, I'm thinking with $10 million and very few eligible and STIP over 5% yesterday, we should be good for a little while.
Okay.
Jack, I would observe that it's just the earnings of the trust in the current year that can be distributed. Then a following year, they could ask the legislature to appropriate undistributed. And so point being is I would deem it unlikely that we would have a scenario where we're going to sell units of the trust fund investment pool. More likely that money would just accumulate in STIP, in the short-term investment pool.
So the TFIP investments will accrue into STIP, park there, continue to earn. It's still part of the trust, but it's in trust and STIP, and then they'll pay the benefits out of STIP.
Okay.
Okay, but what does the law say that beneficiaries receive $7,000 a month for 12 months, and then 1/2 of the work comp benefits for another up to 60 months?
Yes.
Okay, so
So
the
this
law
is-
does say that that's an automatic dispersal.
That someone else makes. DOJ makes
Right,
that.
so I don't know, if there is a number of events, you could see the principal be hit.
You could, but it would be some sort of catastrophic type event.
Right.
In which case, then the state general fund would be on the hook to backfill.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
If-
go ahead.
If there's not enough funds out of the earnings, then is it the Department of Justice's decision to use the principal, or does that take legislative approval? Dan probably is the one to answer that.
The bill as it's currently written, Department of Justice could come pull that money, and then they would have to request of the next budget any money to backfill.
Okay, thank you.
Other question? Okay, John.
All right, going on to the Montana State Library Trust. The Montana State Library Trust has existed for quite a few decades. It only recently received a significant donation, so that the balance of the trust is now a little north of $1.5 million. So when we were contacted by the Montana State Library, we believed that we could increase their earnings off that by investing the money in the trust fund investment pool. Previously, it existed, but all in the short-term investment pool. This money does. The distributions are optional, or I should say the state library controls those distributions. So it's possible and desirable in their eyes that the balance of the fund should increase over time. Maybe some of us are familiar with what this mainly does is for the people with impaired eyesight. They get the audiobooks is the main thing this does.
So there's no balance stipulation on the trust.
Nope.
That's correct.
And the state library manages the whatever occurs in the
Yep.
trust. You're just.
We're managing it, and if they put in a sell, we sell.
And so that would be very similar to how we manage the various historical society accounts.
Okay, John?
I think that's it for me, Dan. Is that seem right?
The only thing, 40.800, this is the coal severance tax investment policy statement. And the only change here is adding on page 1, the conservation district fund and the coal board fund into the policy. Other than that, it's the same.
So just in the general policy statements that John has covered there, before we call for a vote, is there any questions for John or Dan, or any observations or anything else that the board needs to have to make a good vote?
When we make the motion, Mr. Chair, can we specify which of these policies, the number of the policies, so that we have?
Thank you for volunteering to do that, Mark. And so right now I will call for a motion. Mark?
Okay, I will move following policy, investment policy statement changes subject to grammatical changes that board member Peterson will provide to our staff. That would include statement 40.800, 40.801, that's a coal severance tax trust distributions. 40.807, invest the coal severance tax permanent fund. 40.808, which is a new policy statement for the Montana Coal Endowment Conservation Fund. And then 40.948 for the Montana End of Watch Trust Fund. 40.949, which is the Montana State Library Trust. 40.900. And 40.900, which is the separately managed accounts investment policy statement.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
I would second that, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Maggie. Is there any discussion or question? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of Mark's long motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed to that motion? Hearing none, the policy statements are approved unanimously. Okay.
So now I don't have to say anything about the rest.
Oh, no, Mark, you're on a roll. So then the next thing, does anybody want a break or anything, or are we just gonna run through this?
Let's keep going.
Let's just
Okay,
roll.
we'll roll through. So now we're gonna talk about housing trust policies. And so we got Dan, Louise, and Doug to go over that for us. And so I'll turn it over to you, Dan.
All right, this is where it gets fun. So everybody. The board, given our experience with loans and our successes in the down payment assistance program and the other various CARES Act programs over the last several years, Governor Gianforte proposed the Homes Act, which would be administered by the Board of Investments. After a number of legislative cartwheels, we wound up with the Homes Act put into another act, which I'm sure Representative Youngkin is all too familiar with, a bill starting off over here and winding up over there in a completely different randomized form. So we had House Bill 819 pass, and within House Bill 819, there are two particular programs that I want to walk through that have their own investment policy statements, as well as the overarching housing infrastructure program. So maybe to start, we'll do 90.9 or 40.950. So this is the revolving loan fund. This essentially establishes one of the two specific programs. So this would be under Doug's purview. So this would be a loan program similar. It's basically a carbon copy of our participation loan program, but for residential development as authorized by statute for specific infrastructure, again, authorized by statute. It's up to $1 million or 50% of a project, no more. I don't see this one getting a lot of use. When you're starting to talk about 10-to-1 acreage requirements, 10 units per acre, $1 to $2 million is not going to get you very far, particularly in some of our larger communities. But nonetheless, it was created and therefore we get to administer it. So that's 40.950. 40.951 is the separate part of the act that created the Workforce Housing Fund. And if I can, I know this is out of order, but let's sort of put this one in the parking lot and come back to it because I want to get through the Doug and Louise portions of this before we get to that. So if you go to 70.751, this is the revolving bond program. The other portion of the bill, in addition to the loan section, is a security purchase program. And this was the main thrust of the Homes Act that the governor proposed. So under this, the board would be authorized to step in and participate in some form of security issued by an eligible entity. Eligible entity is that which is defined in the InterCap statute in 17.5/1604. Municipal Finance Consolidation Act. And if you look at sub 3, we could buy up to 50% of the security issued for water, wastewater, stormwater, street, road, curb, gutter, and sidewalk infrastructure to serve newer rehabilitated residential development. This is, and I'd welcome Louise or Peg's participation in this if I screw anything up. Basically what we did is we took the InterCap program and laid as much of it over the top of this as we could. We have a successful program. We know how to do these deals. We know how to underwrite local governments, but we have that added value in this particular case where the market is going to price a note, price some form of security, do the underwriting, and then we will be able to step in on the back end and buy up to 50% of it at a reduced rate to help facilitate that development.
We're not doing the underwriting.
We will do a review, but we're not doing a full underwriting. That's the joy of some of our programs is by us not being a direct lender, we get bank review, we get market review. In this case, we're going to get bond counsel review by both the issuer's bond counsel and our bond counsel, who could be the same. we will get some market force somewhere will place a value on that bond and say what they'll pay for it. And then we'll step in and be able to review and buy it at a quarter of the interest rate that's on the face of the security. So that is and that is how we check the box on the statutory requirement that we ensure affordability for the duration of the note. Well, we'll be able to monetize at the beginning what that fee will be without our participation and with our participation. So we'll be able to show this particular bond, these units are more affordable by this dollar amount because of our participation.
But that's only 50% of the bond for the infrastructure.
Correct. So, but the infrastructure is
much for affordability.
well,
It could.
it could. So let's take an example of we buy a 5% note or a 6% note because the math's easier at 1.5%. Well, in order to do water, wastewater, stormwater, street, road, curb, gutter, there's going to have to be some sort of district set up that will charge those individual units for that infrastructure. It will be more affordable to have, you know, up to a 20% write down in your infrastructure costs than otherwise. And the good news is it's not something that we will have to work on the private sector side with to ensure that there's some sort of flow through. We'll be able to monetize it right at the beginning. We'll know what their rate is, what our rate is, and we'll be able to show these monthly fees for that particular district and those particular parcel owners will be X, and it'll be locked for the term of our note. So we check that statutory box.
And you think this will be used?
I think this will be heavily used. This is the one I'm getting calls about because it's more tangible. There's no $1 million, 50%. There's no $1 million limit. $1 million worth of water lines does not do a lot.
So there's no limit.
There's no limit that has been imposed by statute. That said, when we do the review to bring to you, we are still, later on, you'll see where we, within the loan committee charter throughout this, we say we'll abide by the loan committee charter requirements. So anything up to $1 million will be staff approval. Up to 5 million will be committee approval. Anything over 5 million will be board approval. So we'll all have an opportunity to review what could be concentration risk if we see any super projects that come forward. You know, you've been very clear with us. Even within the in-state loan program with $250 million, this has 106 million. Don't bring me anything, or don't bring anything to you over 30. That's not a policy, but it's been the board's feeling that that's the maximum exposure you want us to bring to you. You know, I can see that being sort of phased here of, okay, you know, if it gets close to 15, I'm going to be calling members of the loan committee and the board members. Is this too high? Is this too concentrated? Should 50% be 40%? You know, what's your comfort level on packaging these deals?
I'd hate to see one big city take it all, so.
Well, except for Butte.
Even Butte.
Okay.
Especially.
Um,
But then, as far as the 10 units per acre, right? The borrower is certifying that they're gonna meet that criteria, or their bond counsel or whoever, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and once they certify there's 10 units per acre, we're going to say, okay, fine, and that's when we'll take 50% of the.
We'll start our review process. I would not say that this is gonna be an automatic in. This is still gonna get a level of diligence.
Right.
But, you know, to get through the door, you're gonna have to meet that 10-to-1.
Okay.
Um,
And so the funds for this is coming out of the $100 million.
the 106 million. So there's two buckets of money. There's
Okay.
106 million for the Homes Act. So 751, 752 will be within that 106, and even 950 and 163. 951, the workforce housing piece, has a separate bucket of $12 million.
Okay, so can, of whatever amount it is, 100 million, it's not, this that's not, this doesn't limit that. You can use all of that in this program.
Yes.
This is the other program.
Yes, we're treating it like we have all of our other loan programs. If the market decides that the bond program is more useful than the loan program, come into the bond program.
Okay.
The market decides the loan program is more valuable, great, come into the loan program.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay,
Jeff, there will be a test for the loan committee chairman on these things.
Okay. Well, we'll need some training. So,
So maybe moving on to 70.752, this is the loan program requirements. This would be the Doug side of the house. Again, we just picked up the participation loan program as much as we could and overlaid it here. It's a system that works. We know it. Lenders know it. We try to replicate it as much as we can. Not a lot to add there. I don't think we're gonna get a lot of use on this side. But it's created, so let's make sure that we have the tools to deal with it.
Why don't you think it'll be used?
The caps are too low. $1 million is just not enough money to go through for 10 units.
Right.
You process.
Yeah. So maybe what
These-
I,
Question, Mr. Chairman. Dan, do you think that these might get used more in smaller communities? I mean, the big seven, probably not, but I don't know if Malta needed some housing or something. You probably could pull it off in Malta.
I think it would be a cost benefit of whether or not you'd want to do the 50-50 on the loan program, or you'd want to come into intercap instead. So all these programs sort of play together. So is it more useful to come in this housing system to do the water and sewer, or do you get a better rate through intercap? That'll be something we'll have to navigate with the individual participants. $1 million to connect a sewer line in like a Malta or a Rapple J or something like that may be useful. I don't think $1 million's do anything. I don't even think you can buy lunch in Bozeman for $1 million these days.
Well, between lunch and the parking place, probably not, but um, but the smaller communities would seem that the land cost would be significantly less than in Bozeman and the other 7 big counties, with the possible exception of Butte, because they're still trying to give stuff away there. But the smaller communities, seems to me that they might be able to participate a little bit more frequently.
Yep, and Louise and Doug regularly attend the Economic Developers Conferences, the League of Cities conferences, and the county conferences. And Louise always does a great presentation. Doug does a great presentation. So we're gonna market this like we do any other program, and we'll work with any local government or developer to see, which is the right tool.
But part of the problem I see is from the staffing point of view, there's got to be a lot of education, because they've got to go through the various programs and what will work. So it is going to create some more work for Doug and Louise. And I'm sure they're glad to hear that.
Job security,
Yes.
Okay,
I
yeah.
have one question on the actual policy statement.
Yep.
On page 3 of 4 at the top, it says appraisal requirements.
Mhm.
And it says, I understand you pulled this out of the participation loan stuff, but it's licensed Montana commercial appraisers.
Multifamily units are considered commercial
Commercial,
property
okay.
instead of residential.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions on 752?
If you're not satisfied with the commercial appraisals, can you go to a, regular realty appraisal or housing?
I don't think the bank would, because again, we're gonna receive, our applicant in this case is gonna be the bank.
Right.
And Jeff can maybe clarify here, but I don't see a multifamily development going the residential side through the bank.
All right.
yeah, you have to have a full appraisal for anything over $1 million.
And that's a commercial appraisal.
Yeah, multifamily is technically commercial. Commercial appraiser would do that.
10.163. So this is the loan committee charter, and I've talked to several of you about this. Doug had a great point the other day of instead of calling out the individual programs. So if you look at AAC, 1AC, board staff may approve all coal trust, intercap, Montana housing, but the thought would be instead of doing a red line there of the individual programs, have it read board staff may approve all coal tax trust, intercap, and other loan programs and other loans up to $1 million, down below, greater than $1 million, up to 5, down below, in excess of 5. So rather than call out, as we didn't do this for down payment assistance, we just sort of said it applies under those systems. Apply that same logic here, that rather than call out specific programs, just say coal trust, intercap, and other loan programs.
So you're suggesting wording change here?
I'm suggesting wording changes of basically eliminating the red line and having it read, board staff may approve all coal tax trust, intercap, and other loans up to 1 million. So you just strike and Montana Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Program or Montana Housing Infrastructure Revolving Bond Program security throughout, which is the only change that takes place through here, and saying, or other loans. So that we capture everything, because really the reason for updating this is to have that delegated authority to staff up to $1 million, to have delegated authority to the committee up to 5 million, and then having the full board review anything over 5 million.
And I think it keeps it consistent with the previous policy too. So.
Okay, so anywhere that it has a listing names.
It just say other, yep. Okay, those were the easy parts. 40.951, not part of the governor's original proposal on the Homes Act, but identified as by the legislature as a critical element, is workforce housing for state of Montana employees. And you can see purpose is to advance the construction or purchase of workforce housing of employees who work at state-owned facilities that have inmates or behavioral health patients. Now, the language continues that it needs to be in a county of less than 15,000 for employees in a county of less than 15,000. So when you go through all of the facilities of the state that house state inmates or behavioral health patients, the only two counties that qualify are Powell and Deer Lodge County, which I know everyone's shocked by, that they're the only ones that get the money. But that's the way the statute's written. So it is to service the employees of Montana State Hospital and of Montana State Prison. No one else checks the boxes that the statute has laid out. So what this policy does is basically outline the generic requirements of the program. The biggest piece that I draw your attention to is page 2 of 2. Under permitted investments, the Workforce Housing Fund may only invest in STIP, United States Treasury securities, and real estate. The reason that we call out real estate is after running the numbers and doing some pro forma after our last board meeting, Peg did an excellent job putting together an employee profile for these two facilities. To put it in perspective, the target audience at the Montana State Hospital is a psych tech. Level 1 psych tech is making $39,000 a year as of July 1, when the new pay plan goes into place. The Montana State Prison target audience is a level 1 correctional officer. They make $49,000 a year as of July 1, when the new pay plan and House Bill 2 goes into place. So if you use sort of standard banking, rough math, 3 times that salary is about what you can afford for your mortgage. Well, there is nothing around that valley for $150,000. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find much anywhere in the state right now for $150,000 or $120,000. It's my belief that we are going to have to do like we did with office space in the city of Helena and construct something in order to meet the provisions of this. My proposal to the board is, and what this this policy outlines is basically we treat it like Montana, like we do the Montana properties portfolio, that staff does not have the same level of delegated authority, that we don't get to go out and spend $1 million or anything like that. Everything that we do within this $12 million has to come to the board for full review. So if we decide that construction is the right path, we've got to come to you and make the case like we do with every building in Helena. This pencils, and show you the pro forma, show you the deal, show you the rents, show you the income, basically treat it like we do the Montana properties. Because I don't see a better way to do this. I don't think it's an appropriate task for delegated authority, particularly given the sensitivities around it. So that's the proposal before you, is to treat this workforce housing fund as a Montana property fund for the time being.
You're not gonna build dormitories now with that fund, so, and rent them out that way.
I don't think dormitories are wouldn't do dorms. I think it'd be more duplexes, condos, that type of structure.
And you don't think that they're affordable for these individuals, these employees to purchase that, whatever you can build it for?
These will have to be built under what I would say are I don't want to say non-bank, but non-bank. I mean, you're not going to be able to do a 30-year amortization on these and make them work. FHA, you can do or not FHA. The feds allow a 50-year amortization. So we're going to have to do some of the things like they do in the affordable housing realm in order to make this work. And I think it can work. I think that we've got a couple of things going for us. One, if we build on state land, well, our acquisition costs are nothing. Two, we're tax exempt. And we'd be hiring state employees, so that's going for us. So when you start knocking away at the benefits we have versus a private developer, you can make it more affordable more quickly.
Okay, so I need to understand, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
No, I think it's important. That's all. Go ahead, Mark.
So, we're looking at this housing project. And the board may own these units as an investment to rent.
Of this particular fund, yes. So of this SMA, it would be an allowable investment, yes.
Okay. Would it be would the money go back to this revolving program, or where would the money go?
So under the realm of, did they ask us, back to your earlier question, in a normal course and in a normal session, these revolving funds would actually revolve and the interest would come back into this. But the way that the bill was drafted, the interest does not flow back into the funds. It goes to what would normally be the general fund, but because of the debt-free account that they created in a different bill, all of the money now goes to the debt-free account. So as long as we're making money for any of these housing programs, they don't go back into the revolving funds that they were established. They go into the debt-free account for the next 2 years, and barring legislative change, then they go into the general fund. For this 12 million though, because it's an investment, the 12 million will stay solvent, but we'll book it as 12 million in assets as opposed to 12 million in cash. So that money won't go out.
And so you're building these units. The idea was to have affordable housing for these employees.
Correct.
Are you also going to offer them for sale if people want to buy these units or not?
I'd say not to begin with. I think getting them getting them built and getting them rented, because when you start talking about for sale, now all of a sudden you're talking about, well, you only get this as long as you work for this organization.
Okay, so the easiest way to do is
The
to
easiest-
build it and call it.
And rent it to employees, because then you can control who has them. If you sell them, let's say you do 3 years with the state, you get this tremendous benefit of housing, and then all of a sudden you decide, I don't want to work for the state anymore, I want to go somewhere else. Well, now we've got a very big statutory compliance issue of, did we just subsidize housing for someone who's no longer a state employee and no longer meets the requirements of eligibility?
Okay, but I thought the intent here was to have a housing mechanism to entice employees to stay employed because they're going to have affordable housing in proximity of their employment.
Correct, which whether or not that's owned or rented is allowed. The issue that you get into with owning is, in order to make it pencil, well, not to make it pencil, but to make it pencil more quickly, is you're gonna have to use state land, which there is an abundance of throughout the Deer Lodge Valley. Well, now we'd be talking about selling off state land for individual residential units. That gets into a whole other realm of mess.
Got it.
So we're not approving any projects, we're just
No,
approving the concept basically.
yes, so
With
what,
the control.
yes, so nothing, in order for us to do anything other than STIP or treasuries, this board would have to vote to authorize, and we would have to basically bring you, like we did with the TRS acquisition. Here's how it pencils, here's the IRR, here's project costs, we'd have to bring you all of it. Like we do with the Montana properties.
And it's not gonna be an easy thing to put together.
It's gonna be a different challenge.
And so from a staffing point of view, is that you?
That'll be me, Peg, our property manager. Because I think the thing we do not want to be in the space of is collecting rent checks or answering phone calls for the lights are out or someone parked in my spot. That is a suboptimal place to be, as we've learned with our other commercial real estate. So we would definitely have a property manager involved in this, and getting that in place sooner rather than later is better. But again, the numbers have to work on this. If the numbers don't work on this, yeah, we're the Board of Investments, not the Board of Subsidy. And if we can make it work for DOC and DPHHS, I think we are the right entity to do it. Particularly when you look at the tax implications for those employees, that they can get a subsidized rent rate through us without having it be taxable income, which is a big deal, particularly if you're gonna be, making $39,000 a year and then paying, on your W-2 an additional bump because you got an affordable housing unit to go work at the prison. Which is why that separation I think is important. But the biggest thing is you the bosses have to be comfortable with it. And this is one of those items that it's sensitive enough and financially impactful that I think treating it like we do the Montana properties is the right path.
Great. So, Mark, you got any other thing? Any other board members? Because this is very unusual.
And the language is really weird in this House bill. Funds must be distributed to assist those who work and are living in counties. Distribution must be made prorated based on annual average state. It's just weird that it says distributed to them. I mean, it's not going to be distributed based on what we're talking here. It's going to be used for purposes of building facilities.
So there's a long sordid backstory about how the language got to be the language that it is. And then if you continue reading, they added "or construction" into the bill. Because everybody looked around and said, well, how much are we going to actually be able to get done with $12 million for 500 employees in a valley pockmarked with state land, federal land, Superfund land, and very concentrated infrastructure? I mean, there's no infrastructure in Powell County outside of the city of Deer Lodge. There's no infrastructure in Deer Lodge County outside of the city of Anaconda and immediately adjacent to the Warm Springs campus. I mean, everything around Warm Springs is either British Petroleum, federal, or state.
So it's interesting because like you said, there's so many different things here, Dan, and the last thing is acquiring through construction or purchase housing for employees. But what if somebody comes to you and says, well, I want you to do a 50% match or 50% of the project for me for this house? Is
So
that gonna be part of what you all do then?
if somebody so we don't do direct lending to start with. So if Johnny Psych Tech comes to us and says, I want to buy a house and you got to pay for half of it. Well, that's not authorized because now we're in a space of we're underwriting individual home loans that may or may not meet the 10-to-1 acreage requirement of the Homes Act. And I would argue that individual home purchases are going to be more Homes Act than they are this. So that's the other, there's the other piece of where or how is the appropriate way to say, okay, this isn't working. Let's try the next thing. I would argue our best bet is to start with what will work, get some pencil to paper on that. If it works, great. If not, then we're back to the drawing board. But I know from an employer's side, particularly at the Department of Corrections, they would love some sort of, here's where you go, here's a house for you, prison guard. It's set up, turnkey, easy peasy, as opposed to, are you still an employee? Are you not employed? You have to sell your house, you have to pay something back, you have to refi. As soon as you leave employment, what do you do with that land that is state land, but now it's privately owned on top? It gets real messy real quick.
Well, we gotta be careful in that it can't be too great a benefit where everybody wants it, and then we cause all kinds of conflict.
Right. I mean, that's the other delicate side is there's enough employees in these particular valleys at these particular facilities that a big super project could disrupt the whole real estate market. So going at an appropriate pace to not, I mean, as much as Director Kober would love his house value to go up by double, I don't know that we want to cause property values to go up that much or crash that much in given any sort of development.
Okay, other questions? If not, Mark, I hate to do this to you, but I really do.
Can I just make one other quick statement? So on the policy 40.950, if you look at permitted investments, one of those investments is it's on page 2, permitted investments up for fully collateralized interest-bearing demand deposit accounts at Montana domiciled banks. So the thought on, sorry,
Where is it again?
so 90, sorry,
Okay, got it.
policy 9, okay. One of the things I've talked to several of you about and some of our banking partners is the equivalent of a link deposit program. So this money is going to be very slow to move out. It takes a while to get bonds set up. It takes a while to get these, several hundred unit housing projects ready to go. In the meantime, these funds will just be parked and spitting off money to go to the debt-free account, which I don't think complies with the purposes of the legislation of helping to build housing capacity throughout the state. So one of the things that I'd like to do and just make sure you're all aware of, and you can tell me, at this point, boy, Dan, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, is create through this demand deposit account, sort of a link deposit program. So what does that entail? We would work with Montana approved lenders, Montana banks, and we would put money we would deposit money with them that they could then use to finance at a reduced rate housing construction that meet that 10-to-1 unit requirement. We're fully collateralized.
Because the underlying asset is.
The underlying asset is fully collateralized. We're just taking a write down on the interest rate. So construction loans are higher interest because they're higher administrative costs. I mean, I would.
Higher risk.
Higher, but in this instance, we would be able to collateralize our deposit with that bank and then let that bank go out and help their customers build more housing units. From our perspective, in a no risk situation, because we have full collateralization, under the Director Ramasco scenario of how do I not get fired today? Well, we never go into a space where we're not fully collateralized. But we would accept a reduced interest rate than what we'd otherwise charge on a deposit in order to facilitate more housing development.
Within the purview of the 10-to-1.
Within the.
And how would you control so one bank doesn't do it all?
It would be the same as we do with our existing DDA agreements.
Okay.
They would, we would look at that individual bank, we would negotiate the rate with that bank, we would place the money with that bank under a separate contract within the fixed income portfolio.
So that's just going to be one-off negotiations in regards to what that kind of reduced rate would have to be to create the incentive to do kind of the project on the other side.
Correct.
So you're going to present both options to your lending.
We'll present all the options to the lenders, which works. I think it's going to be, frankly, I think that would be more valuable than the revolving loan fund because there's more flexibility. You have higher dollar amounts.
As far as affordability.
As far as both affordability and access to capital.
And you're targeting on construction, not a perm basis. So presumably you would target a specific project for construction. Once construction's complete, then the funds would be pulled back, or would they revert to a market rate until the next project is?
I think so I'd envision a project by project and limit it to a 24-month time frame so that that takeout loan should be at that bank. I don't think with these dollars we want to be in a 30-year or 20-year position. We want to be in to help out with the construction side. And then on the takeout side, that's where I think the permanent bank financing is a more appropriate venue. I'm just trying to get 106 million moving in the economy more quickly. And I think that construction loan side, given the limited duration of those, we'll be able to spin it back into longer term financing through the bond program or the loan program more quickly. But we also help collateralize the banks, or capitalize the banks, I think is a better way to put it, in order to facilitate some of these.
I think it's a good solution and a good idea, specifically because, like you said, that 10-to-1 restriction is going to be really tough to operate at, kind of in the more active markets with $1 million loan cap. But this structure basically kind of facilitates, the opportunity for larger projects or just a partial subsidy. So I think you'll be able to kind of create some of the, impact that it was designed to by just putting those linked deposits into the banks on larger projects potentially. So I think it's a good workaround. I do think it'll work well.
So in that scenario, this collateralized deposit scenario, there's criteria in this stuff about long-term affordability. So how does that scenario, how do you certify that there's long-term affordability in that scenario?
So this would be an investment of the board. not necessarily a loan under the statute, because this is a collateralized deposit. So it would be a.
But it's using the 100 million.
It's using the 106 million. So the affordability aspect of it, and again, that gets into some of the legislative dialogue of some folks really cared about affordability. Some folks said supply is good and more supply will drive down price and that will make things affordable for everybody. I'm not going to get into the supply demand side of the economics of residential development, not at least for the purposes of this conversation. But from my perspective, the overall mission of the funds, of the 106 in particular, is how can we create more opportunities for housing?
Right.
Putting
You still
out
have the 10-1.
and still have the 10-1, just to check the box and make sure. But if we're making a deposit decision, is this bank worthy of our holding our cash for us? And that bank, and we're fully collateralized. So if something goes wrong with the project, we're still fully collateralized. The only thing we're having a conversation about is a rate and whether or not that rate facilitates additional development. And that is the interplay here, as opposed to particular water sewer projects, particular bond terms. It's a regular negotiated deposit.
And just to clarify, you're going to be fully collateralized on your deposit by treasuries or agency securities, not collateralized by the project.
Correct.
That are good, yeah.
Okay, anything else? Ted?
I hope that's it.
Anything else from the board? If not, Mark, would you do a motion like you did the last one with the numbers?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move the following policy statements. Policy 4.950 for the Montana Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund. Policy 40.951 for the Montana Workforce Housing Policy. Policy 70.751 for the Montana Housing Infrastructure Revolving Bond Program. Policy 70.752 for the Infrastructure Revolving Loan Program. And then the overriding loan committee charter 10.163 to incorporate all these changes with the change that Dan recommended to say all other loan programs rather than specify individual programs.
Good, thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And so.
Co-second.
Seconded. Any other questions or observations or anything else? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of those motions just Mark had made, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to the same policy recommendation? Hearing none, those are approved unanimously. Dan, is there anything else you need to do?
Not right now, but I'll email you if there is. Thank you all.
The next board meeting will be regular in August.
Regular in August. I hopefully we'll have our 9th member and we can have a conversation about your trip to meet with our consultants.
Oh, I thought it was to Glacier.
Yeah, no, we got Glacier coming up when Cindy picks us up in the plane, and then we'll go to Portland.
Good.
And that's August 22nd or 23rd and 24th, right?
Okay. So Jeremy, thank you for participating. Sometimes our meetings are a little more exciting than this, so we'll see you in August. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Turn.
Thank